WWE wrestling isn't just about high-risk acrobatics and spectacular moves. It's also a place where wrestlers' bodies endure enormous daily strain. From lasting scars and deformed ears to permanent joint and bone injuries, these changes affect not only their appearance but also shape their careers and in-ring styles. Today, Wrestling Sphere takes you inside the ways WWE wrestlers' bodies have been permanently transformed. Marks of a profession defined by passion and sacrifice. 1. Mick Foley. If there's one name that perfectly represents the physical toll professional wrestling can take on the human body, it's Mick Foley. He wasn't just one of the most fearless wrestlers of all time. His body became living proof of the price you pay when you turn yourself into a sacrifice for the fans. Foley's list of injuries reads more like the medical records of an entire football team. In 1986, he broke his jaw, a serious injury that made eating a painful ordeal, yet he returned to the ring just a few months later. Between 1989 and 1998, he gradually lost all of his front teeth, turning his crooked grin into a trademark of the madman persona that defined his career. In 1993, tragedy struck again when he broke his nose twice, but the worst came during a brutal match with Vader, when his head got caught in the ropes and 2/3 of his left ear were literally torn off. But Foley's painful journey didn't end there. In 1995, he suffered second-degree burns on his shoulder and arm during a match that involved real fire. Then came the infamous Hell in a Cell match in 1998, one of the most shocking moments in WWE history. That night, Foley was thrown off the top of the steel cell, crashing through the announcer's table, and later was slammed through the roof of the cage a second time. The aftermath left him with a concussion, dislocated jaw, bruised kidney, and a punctured lip. The sight of Mick Foley, bloodied and smiling with a tooth lodged in his nose, became an unforgettable image of wrestling's daredevil spirit. Over the course of his career, Foley required more than 300 stitches across his body. Forehead, chin, cheeks, lips, even his hands. And those are just the documented injuries. In reality, dozens of chronic aches and pains still follow him to this day. Mick Foley's body is like a living journal, every scar a chapter, every dent a story of sacrifice. Mick Foley was more than a wrestler. He was the embodiment of courage and absolute dedication. He turned his pain into legendary moments that made millions of fans rise to their feet. If anyone deserves to be called the man who sacrificed the most for the audience's joy, it's unquestionably Mick Foley. 2. Scott Steiner. Scott Steiner went through one of the most terrifying moments of his entire career while wrestling in Puerto Rico, a moment that nearly cost him his life. During what seemed like a routine match, Big Papa Pump suddenly took a direct kick to the throat. The impact caused severe damage to an internal blood vessel, leading to internal bleeding. Blood quickly filled his lungs, making it hard to breathe. Steiner collapsed and had to be rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Doctors told him he had less than 5 hours to live without immediate surgery. It was a true life-or-death moment, with his career and future hanging by a thread. Thankfully, after hours of emergency surgery, Steiner survived. The operation, however, left a nearly 18-inch scar across his chest, a permanent reminder of that near-fatal day. Although he was able to return to the ring, his body was never the same. After the surgery, his pectoral muscles began to atrophy and separate, leaving his chest noticeably deformed. For a wrestler who built his entire persona around an imposing, muscular physique, this change was difficult to accept. Fans could easily spot the difference when comparing Steiner's appearance before and after the incident. His chest no longer symmetrical, leaving a hollow look in the middle. Even so, Steiner's fighting spirit never faded. He kept competing, maintaining his trademark intensity and ferocity inside the ring. The Puerto Rico incident left more than just a physical scar. It became a constant reminder of how dangerous professional wrestling can be. His story stands as proof that this sport can permanently change a wrestler's body, not just on the outside, but deep within. 3. Shawn Michaels. When people think of Shawn Michaels, the legendary Heartbreak Kid, what usually comes to mind are his classic matches, incredible performances, and the iconic career he built. But there's one detail that fans can't ignore, especially in the later years of his run: HBK's eyes. One of them became noticeably crossed, giving his familiar face a strikingly different look. Interestingly, this change didn't come from aging or a typical injury, but from an in-ring accident. The man responsible was none other than Kane, Glenn Jacobs, ironically regarded as one of the safest and most professional wrestlers in the business. During their match at Unforgiven 2004, a botched bump left Shawn with significant damage to his eye. The injury didn't immediately slow his career, but over time, the misalignment became more pronounced. Fans could clearly see that his gaze was no longer symmetrical, yet HBK still delivered show-stealing performances right up until his retirement. A common misconception came in 2008 during his legendary feud with Chris Jericho. In that storyline, Jericho was said to have caused Shawn's retina to tear, a dramatic twist WWE leaned on to raise the stakes. Many viewers assumed this was the true cause of his eye condition, but in reality, it was only a scripted angle. So, if anyone can be blamed for Shawn Michaels' signature crossed eye today, it would be Kane and that unfortunate collision at Unforgiven 2004. Even so, HBK turned that imperfection into part of his image, proving he could rise above any setback and preserve one of the greatest legacies in wrestling history. 4. Abdullah the Butcher. In modern professional wrestling, the practice of cutting the forehead with a razor blade, commonly known as belading, has almost completely disappeared. This is partly due to safety concerns and partly because today's television audience is far less accepting of excessive blood. But if you want a living example of a wrestler who cut himself too often and too deep throughout his career, all you have to do is look at the head of Abdullah the Butcher, the Mad Butcher, famous worldwide. For Abdullah, blood wasn't just an occasional part of his style, it became his defining trademark. Whenever he stepped into the ring, fans practically expected the match to be drenched in blood. With his trademark fork always in hand, he never hesitated to carve up opponents, driving crowds into a frenzy. Yet to create those moments of chaos, Abdullah also sacrificed himself, repeatedly slicing his own forehead to deliver the kind of hardcore spectacle people came to see. The result is that his scalp today looks like a wall covered in scars. Deep grooves are carved into his head, so pronounced they can be spotted from a distance. Mick Foley, himself a hardcore legend, once joked that the dents in Abdullah's skull were so deep he could slide a poker chip into them and it wouldn't fall out. While funny, that remark reflects just how much punishment Abdullah's head endured over hundreds of blood-soaked battles. Now at 84 years old, Abdullah's head no longer carries the same intimidating aura it once did, but it still stands as a reminder of an era when violence and bloodshed were inseparable from wrestling. His scars are more than the consequences of his profession, they're part of his legacy, cementing the image of the Butcher, a man remembered around the world as a symbol of blood-soaked hardcore wrestling. 5. DDP. Diamond Dallas Page, better known as DDP, was one of the biggest stars of WCW's golden era in the 1990s. He was recognized for his dramatic matches, standout personality, and decorated career. But when he made the jump to WWE, things didn't unfold the way he had hoped. Instead of being pushed as a major player, DDP was placed into a controversial storyline where he played an obsessive stalker targeting Sarah, the Undertaker's wife. While the angle drew plenty of attention, it drastically altered how fans viewed him. The low point came when DDP was decisively beaten by The Undertaker and Sarah, abruptly ending the feud. After that defeat, he disappeared for a while before returning with a completely different attitude and presentation. No longer the creepy stalker, he reinvented himself as an inspirational speaker, radiating optimism, positivity, and a constant bright smile. To fully commit to this transformation, DDP even changed his appearance. He underwent a facelift to smooth out signs of aging and had his teeth whitened to the point they practically glowed under the arena lights. The result was a version of DDP who looked almost unrecognizable, youthful, confident, and far more polished. This new persona quickly grabbed the audience's attention. He came across like a charismatic salesman, the type who could win people over with enthusiasm and endless motivational energy. Love him or hate him, there was no denying that DDP's makeover, both in look and character, allowed him to open a fresh chapter in his career and step out of the shadow of a storyline that had once hurt his credibility. Ultimately, this reinvention went beyond the ring. The upbeat image became the foundation for DDP's personal brand outside of wrestling, paving the way for his journey as a widely recognized life coach and motivational figure in the real world. 6. Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash stands as one of wrestling's most iconic giants, with a career spanning over 3 decades in both WWE and WCW. But the toll his body paid to keep that run alive was devastating. Throughout his prime, Nash carried the weight of his massive 7-foot frame, enduring the strain of hundreds of matches. The result was catastrophic damage to his legs, especially his right one, which became so battered it was permanently deformed. Nash admitted that during the final stretch of his career, every step felt like torture. Years of accumulated injuries, from torn quadriceps and strained ligaments to a ruptured Achilles tendon, progressively destroyed his mobility. Eventually, he reached a point where competing was no longer possible, forcing him to retire. For a man who shook the industry alongside Scott Hall and Hulk Hogan by founding the NWO, stepping away because his own legs betrayed him was a crushing blow. Yet Nash's story isn't entirely tragic. After leaving the ring, he chose to undergo a major reconstructive surgery to repair his nearly ruined legs. It was no simple procedure. Both knees had to be completely replaced. Recovery took nearly 2 years, demanding endless physical therapy and a total lifestyle adjustment. The outcome was remarkable. After months of painful rehabilitation, Nash regained the ability to stand tall and walk comfortably, something he hadn't felt in decades. He even said it was the first time in years he could move without constant pain. While he never returned to full-time competition, the successful surgery allowed him to keep making appearances at WWE events and fan conventions without the looming fear of injury. Kevin Nash's journey is a testament to resilience and perseverance. Even though his legs were nearly destroyed, he fought through it and reclaimed his quality of life, proving that even the biggest warriors sometimes need time to heal. 7. Hulk Hogan. If you want a clear picture of how much height Hulk Hogan lost after decades in the ring, just compare his prime to photos of him in 2019. Once billed at over 6 feet 8 inches, 2.03 meters, Hogan stood as a towering golden mountain whose sheer presence intimidated anyone across from him. But over time, that stature shrank noticeably, and Hogan himself openly admitted it. In a 2005 interview, he revealed that numerous surgeries on his knees, neck, and especially his back had reduced his height to around 6 feet 4 inches. While still an imposing figure, losing nearly 4 inches was undeniable proof of the toll years of punishment had taken on his body. The primary cause was none other than his signature finishing move, the leg drop. What looked like a simple maneuver actually placed massive stress on his spine every time he landed. Performing it not just a handful of times, but thousands of times across more than 2 decades, compressed his vertebrae and severely damaged his discs, leading to a measurable loss of height. Hogan once half-jokingly remarked that every time the crowd erupted for his leg drop, his back flattened a little more. What's remarkable is that despite this severe physical decline, Hogan continued performing for fans well into his 50s. Losing nearly 4 inches wasn't just a cosmetic issue. It affected his balance, mobility, and made competing later in his career increasingly difficult. Looking back, Hulk Hogan's story is a living example of the physical sacrifice behind creating immortal moments in WWE history. Every slowed step, every worn-down disc, became part of the legacy of the man who defined an entire golden era of professional wrestling. 8. Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle is living proof of the iron will it takes to be a professional wrestler. The fact that he managed to stay at the top of the industry for over 2 decades is incredible, especially when you consider the toll his body endured, both before and during his career. His broken neck, something Kurt himself often referenced in promos and which became almost a trademark of his character, left not only lasting physical damage but also a chain of consequences that permanently changed his body. Like many wrestlers who suffered severe injuries, Kurt had to battle muscle atrophy, which became especially noticeable during his run in TNA. Around 2007 and 2008, his arms showed significant loss of size and strength. This was almost certainly due to his inability to train heavily or maintain muscle mass because of ongoing neck issues. The fracture, along with multiple surgeries, impacted the nerves and blood circulation in his arms, leaving his triceps visibly smaller and weaker compared to his WWE prime. Kurt once revealed that he trained his arms twice a week just to keep them looking balanced and strong. Even so, recovery was always a difficult fight. Muscle atrophy isn't something easily controlled. Any break in training caused by neck pain meant rapid loss of size and power. Despite that, Kurt pushed himself through a grueling regimen, determined to protect his physique and keep performing at the highest level. Looking back, Kurt Angle's arms stand as a clear reminder of the price paid for staying in the ring too long. His muscles may not have been as massive as in his youth, but that never diminished his legacy. Instead, they symbolize the sacrifices he made to deliver unforgettable performances, cementing him as one of the most resilient legends in wrestling history. 9. Jun Kasai. Deathmatch wrestling is a niche within professional wrestling, a kind of underground subculture reserved for the fearless, both performers and fans alike. To outsiders, it often looks like nothing more than blood-soaked brutality, shocking for the sake of shock, with no artistic value. But that view barely scratches the surface. Deathmatch isn't just senseless violence, it's the fusion of physical pain and unbreakable willpower, where wrestlers turn their bodies into living testaments of sacrifice for their craft. If you're brave enough to watch an entire deathmatch, you'll quickly realize it's no joke. Wrestlers in this style actually use razor blades, barbed wire, fluorescent light tubes, nail boards, and every kind of weapon imaginable to create horrifying moments. And among the icons of this genre, few bodies have been destroyed as severely as that of Jun Kasai, the crazy monkey of Japan. One glance at Kasai's back and chest tells the story. Hundreds of scars form a chaotic map etched across his skin, narrating over 2 decades of battles with blades, barbed wire, and shattered glass. Every gash, every ripped patch of flesh, has become inseparable from his identity in the ring. Many have compared him to hardcore legends like Sabu, but Kasai's physical toll is so extreme it unsettles even those well-versed in hardcore wrestling. Each time he strips off his shirt and steps into the arena, fans don't just see a wrestler, they see a living monument to the price paid for embracing such a merciless style. Jun Kasai has turned wounds into a part of his persona, with his scar-covered torso serving as a kind of armor that represents resilience, daring, and an unyielding spirit that refuses to back down. 10. Devon Dudley. Devon Dudley is one of the defining faces of the Attitude Era, a man who helped shape the legendary table match style in WWE. Alongside Bubba Ray, he turned the Dudley Boys into the most iconic tag team in history, remembered for brutal TLC battles that fans still talk about to this day. Yet his dedication to the craft left permanent marks on his body, the most obvious one etched across his forehead. Interestingly, the scars carved into Devon's head weren't from being slammed through tables or smashed with steel chairs, things he endured hundreds of times. Instead, they came from his own frequent use of belading, cutting his forehead with a small razor to draw blood and heighten the drama of a match. This was a common practice among wrestlers of that era, and Devon was one of its most frequent practitioners. Bloody brawls were a cornerstone of his career, especially during the Dudley Boys' time in ECW, where violence was practically the brand itself. To make fans believe they were witnessing a fight to the death, Devon often cut deeper, and more often. After hundreds of such matches, old wounds stacked on top of new ones, leaving deep grooves and a permanently scarred, uneven forehead. Even after retirement and induction into the WWE Hall of Fame, those scars remain, an indelible reminder of a career built on blood, sweat, and sacrifice. They stand as proof that Devon gave everything to his audience, enduring real pain to create unforgettable moments. The marks on his head might make some people uneasy, but for wrestling fans, they symbolize a golden era, one where performers like Devon Dudley were willing to sacrifice their own bodies to tell stories inside the ring. 11. The Undertaker. WrestleMania 33 was widely seen as the end of The Undertaker's in-ring career. After his match with Roman Reigns, he left his coat and hat in the center of the ring, a powerful image that made the entire world believe the dead man had closed the book on more than 2 decades in WWE. Retirement rumors grew stronger when, just weeks later, he was hospitalized in New York for hip surgery, a full replacement that doctors had been urging him to undergo for years. The truth is, Undertaker had endured chronic pain for a long time before finally agreeing to the operation. For someone who had wrestled thousands of matches and taken countless bumps, the deterioration of his hips was almost inevitable. Surgery wasn't just about easing pain, it was essential for him to be able to walk normally in everyday life. Yet even hip replacement surgery couldn't fully take The Undertaker away from the ring. After nearly a year of recovery, he returned, slower, heavier in movement, but still carrying the same legendary aura that defined his career. Every appearance after the surgery, even when brief, felt like fans were witnessing a living piece of history. What made his late career both inspiring and heartbreaking was his willingness to keep performing despite his body no longer being at its best. Every step, every strike seemed to come with pain, but he still chose to appear, for the love of wrestling and the fans who adored him. Looking back on The Undertaker's final years, many believe he deserved full rest far earlier. The surgeries on his hips, knees, and shoulders highlight the brutal cost he paid to keep the Phenom alive in the ring. And that sacrifice is exactly what makes his legacy so special, a legend who gave his body to deliver timeless moments for generations of fans. 12. Gangrel. Among WWE's most memorable characters of the 1990s, no one could forget the vampire Gangrel. With his long hair, black trench coat, iconic goblet of blood, and his eerie entrance rising from beneath the stage, he left a lasting mark on fans' memories. But what truly set him apart was his sharp fangs, teeth that weren't just props, but an actual part of his body. Instead of removable dentures, Gangrel chose to have permanent fangs implanted into his gums, making them an inseparable part of who he was. No one knows exactly when he underwent the procedure, but one thing is certain: Gangrel went all in to bring his character to life. Having fixed fangs made everyday activities like eating far more difficult, yet it gave his vampire persona unmatched authenticity. Even though his peak WWE years ended nearly 2 decades ago, Gangrel has continued wrestling on the independent circuit, always maintaining the same chilling appearance and trademark fangs. In 2018, during a match in MLW against Simon Gotch, fans witnessed the 49-year-old vampire literally bite his opponent's hand, turning what many once thought was just storyline theatrics into a shocking reality. The match ended in disqualification, but the moment proved that Gangrel still lived and breathed his character. The way Gangrel has preserved his vampire image for so many years makes him one of the most consistent and unforgettable figures in WWE history. His fangs weren't just an accessory, they were a commitment to his craft, his fans, and the wrestling world, showing that Gangrel never did anything halfway when embodying his persona. In the end, even without the spotlight of mainstream television, Gangrel has stayed true to his essence, a real-life vampire whose fangs have accompanied him throughout his career and become a symbol of who he is. 13. Bruno Sammartino. Cauliflower ear is one of the most recognizable injuries in contact sports like wrestling, judo, and MMA. If not treated quickly, the ear can become permanently deformed, swollen, lumpy, and losing its natural shape. In professional wrestling, no one illustrates this condition more clearly than the legendary Bruno Sammartino, known as the Living Legend and the King of the WWF. This injury occurs when the ear suffers repeated blows or pressure, causing blood and fluid to pool beneath the skin. As a result, the cartilage separates from the tissue that supplies it with nutrients. Without that supply, the cartilage dies, leaving behind hardened clots that permanently alter the ear's appearance. Over time, the ear thickens, swells, and becomes completely misshapen, hence the name cauliflower ear. Sammartino once admitted it was among the most painful experiences of his life. In a 1980 interview with the Washington Post, he stated, "Nothing, not a broken bone or a busted nose, ever hurt me like this." The pain wasn't limited to matches. Even a light breeze brushing against his ear caused him to grit his teeth in agony. That alone shows how sensitive and excruciating the condition was, especially for someone who stepped into the ring almost daily. Despite living with it throughout his career, Bruno never allowed the injury to hold him back. He went on to defend the WWF Championship for over 7 years, a record that remains untouched, and became a symbol of endurance and toughness in wrestling history. His cauliflower ear even became part of his image, a visible reminder of the physical sacrifice he made to stay on top. Today, when fans look at those battered ears, they don't just see a medical aftereffect. They see a story of pain, perseverance, and the fighting spirit of one of the greatest champions of all time. 14. Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar is the embodiment of a true warrior, both inside the WWE ring and in real life. He has endured hundreds of grueling battles, from dramatic showdowns in professional wrestling to brutal wars inside the UFC octagon. That intense level of competition has left permanent marks on his body. One of the most noticeable changes is his right ear, which clearly shows the effects of countless impacts. Lesnar's ear bears the classic signs of cauliflower ear, a common injury among fighters caused by repeated trauma that ruptures blood vessels inside the ear, leading to swelling, hardened tissue, and lasting deformity. What makes it unique is that only Lesnar's right ear suffered severe damage, almost as if it reflects his fighting style and defensive habits. Known for his aggressive, straightforward approach, Lesnar never hesitated to close the distance, often putting his head and right side at risk during grapples, clinches, and takedowns. Every collision, every fight, helped carve the rugged look he carries today, a powerhouse whose appearance tells the story of violence and survival. For Lesnar, though, these changes are not weaknesses. Instead, they serve as badges of honor, proof that he has endured and triumphed through some of the harshest challenges imaginable. The cauliflower ear doesn't take away from his intimidation factor. It enhances it, making him look like a battle-hardened machine ready to crush anyone who stands in his way. Those permanent marks helped shape the Brock Lesnar we see today, a competitor both terrifying and respected, whose very body stands as living evidence of the sacrifice this profession demands. 15. Ryback. Ryback is one of the clearest examples of how a wrestler's body can be permanently altered after years of sacrifice in the ring. The big guy had a career built on hard work and determination, but he also paid a steep price for his passion. In 2014, during an emotional speech, Ryback openly spoke about the struggles he endured and revealed a secret he had never shared before. Going back to 2010, when he was still competing under the name Skip Sheffield, Ryback wrestled in a match in Hawaii that changed his career forever. In what seemed like a routine contest, one bad landing caused his ankle to break. Remarkably, he didn't quit. He kept wrestling despite the excruciating pain. That risky decision only worsened the injury, and eventually his leg bone snapped completely. The road to recovery was brutal. Ryback had to undergo 3 complicated surgeries to repair the damaged bone, followed by months of physical therapy just to walk again. Through perseverance and sheer determination, he made it back to the ring, a comeback many believed was impossible. However, the injury left Ryback with a permanent reminder, a large scar running down his left leg, exactly where the break had occurred. In matches, he often covered it with a knee pad, but longtime fans knew it was proof of what he had endured. Ryback's story highlights not only the harsh toll professional wrestling takes on the human body, but also the resilience of a man who refused to surrender to adversity. The scar on his leg may be permanent, but it also stands as a symbol of the willpower that allowed him to keep stepping into the ring no matter the obstacles. These changes to wrestlers' bodies are a testament to their relentless dedication. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to Wrestling Sphere so you won't miss any of our other exciting content.